We're both jamming to the open.
I tell you what, I'm glad I found that music.
I like it.
I
So
like
I'm looking at my new camera stand, and I feel like I'm looking at a robot. Like this robot's looking at me. It's kind of creepy.
Robots looking at you, kind of creepy, huh?
Yeah. Well, it's so prevalent now in our world. It's like, I guess I'm having anxiety about robots taking over, especially after seeing Elon Musk's robot walking. And you're like, oh my gosh, they look so real. They could be among us right now, and we don't even know it. They probably are.
Yeah, right? Sorry, I got like things
I
making
think,
noise at me
yeah,
everywhere that I'm trying to fix.
it's not just me, Megan.
Where the heck?
So
I have too many browsers open, and somewhere I left a video that started auto playing, and now I gotta find it. Here it is.
there you go. Just don't
Just gotta
turn off
close
the
that.
stream.
Yeah, right.
So thanks everyone for joining us. We are on, gosh, what episode? We're on episode 15. Episode 15, and Nate is trying to turn off. I can kind of hear it.
Yeah, it's quite frustrating because it's like my other machine here. There, I think I got it now.
Yep.
Technology, it's awesome.
So I don't have a whole lot to say except it's crazy at work because we are moving and consolidating some stuff at TNT. We're moving our manufacturing facility to a different building, and our bed lining and truck accessories are moving to another building. So trying to coordinate getting new power and moving a press brake and a table, a laser cutting table, and welders and all our parts and metal and long 20-foot pipe tubes. It's like, oh, overwhelming. And plus we're doing new marketing for social media because this AI is changing everything. And I don't think people realize how much it really is changing, because SEO is totally different than it used to be.
Yeah, that is. I heard where was it? On the news or something. I listened to some tech news in my morning. I have like a set of like those news shorts that come up on my little smart devices over here. And one of them was talking about how the internet is slowly but surely turning into like an AI generated SEO world that humans actually have trouble finding what they want, but all the computers and robots can find exactly what they need. And it's pardon my French, but they call it enshittification.
Oh, that's kind of funny.
And it's just like this concept that the internet is becoming a less useful place than it used to be, right? And all of us old timers, we like to reminisce about old times and how it was better. But I mean, go look at your social media feed someday and tell me that it's really useful.
and the thing, we were just talking about that today. Your post, you're friends with your family, you're friends with some high school people, and maybe a few people you meet over the years, and you're like, oh, I want to see Aunt Susie's, birthday cake, or I want to see. You're not going to see those things because that is not what is relevant to you, or so the AI thinks, because you're out searching. Right.
That's the thing. It is relevant to you. The algorithm thinks it is not.
Correct.
Like we were talking about our friend CPO. I thought he'd left Facebook because I never see his stuff. And you're like, oh no, he's pretty active. I'm like,
right.
Why don't I ever see his stuff? Well, it's because apparently I didn't interact with his things enough.
Correct.
And they think I don't care about him anymore. Sorry, CPO. I still care.
Yeah. Right. I still love you.
I still care.
But yeah, it's funny too, because it's all about your interaction with stuff. So if you want to see Aunt Susie's birthday cake, you got to interact with Aunt Susie. If you want to see Jeep stuff, you have to interact with Jeepers. You have to interact on our Off-Road Insiders. You have to
I
comment.
I could rant about this all night, but that isn't what this show's
Yeah.
about.
No, sorry.
And there's
And
actually a thing that I'm going to talk about in our show announcements that I didn't even run past you yet, Tammy. So it's just going to be a
oh,
surprise to you as well. That may get me on the soapbox too. But there is a video you can find on Netflix called "The Social Dilemma,"
hmm,
and look it up if you have Netflix. But it's basically all about it's it's dramatized, right? It's not like real. It's real information that is dramatized into a thing that makes it hit home a little bit better, right? But it's all about the impact that social media is having on people, right? Like things like teen suicide, things like privacy, things like how they track you and how they determine that algorithm and how they determine what you're looking at and what you like. It's not just what you click on. The
mhm,
app on your phone as you're scrolling through things, if you stop for more time than it takes to just scroll past on anything, it tracks that and says, "Huh,
mhm.
they might be interested in that." And they'll show it to you again.
Right.
It's crazy.
Yep. You gotta.
But
It's.
things like election interference, the sharing of information, I mean, the thing with the Russians around the presidential election a couple years back, like all that, it's scary how
Mhm,
impactful these social networks are on us as people.
mhm.
But anyway, off on
So only listen to the Off-Road Insiders podcast because
yeah.
we've got you.
No, it's like I'm a technologist, right? My first love was computers and technologies and gadgets and geek stuff, right? And Jeeps have always been they're almost like on equal footing in my life. I'm like a dual person, right?
Mhm,
Um, I love technology. I love what it can do for us. I love it's the reason I do stuff like make podcasts and make YouTube videos and whatever, because I have the skills and I want to be able to share that. But there's definitely a line, just like with anything. Like I always like to use cheesesteaks as a good example. I love cheesesteaks, but if I eat them every day, it will kill me,
mhm.
right? I love
Moderate
technology, but there's a line that you can't
moderation.
cross, and I think we're over that line at this point. Anyway, I went off on the rant I said I wasn't
Yeah.
going to go off on.
So I don't really have a whole lot of updating to do, just that it's been super busy at work, and,
Yeah,
that's
I
all I've been doing.
we've talked a little bit about my MRI and my like shoulder and stuff. That has really kept me out of the workshop. I haven't really been able to do anything. I've done a couple odds and ends around the house that needed to get done, but there's no way. What I really want to get working on is my Dana 60 builds, and
Yay.
I just can't like if I move my arm in certain ways, which I guarantee I'm going to have to do to muscle those 60s around, it just hurts like excruciating, right?
Mhm.
I'm going through physical therapy and like it's being repaired, but it's going to take time. So yeah, I don't really have anything Jeep related to talk about either. It's really been just like rest my shoulder as much as I can and do the stuff the PT people have told me to do and take care of stuff around the house. And it's been a boring 2 weeks since we last recorded.
Um, excuse me. I do have lots of Jeep stuff in my life, but it's all
It's
at
all
work.
work. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we did start a new blog at TNT, so I'm like doubling up on my blog writing. So it's fun because now I can like write stuff that I already have written about and writing it in a different way. And
That's kind of cool that you're able to bring that into work. I also do blogs and videos and stuff for work, but
mhm,
it's a whole different context. It's all about
right.
computers and stuff,
Yeah,
which I'm not going to
mine's
bore our audience with. So
right.
really like on one hand, it's fresh stuff that I haven't done before, but on the other hand, it's not stuff I can easily just repurpose from
Right.
stuff I've already done before.
Right.
So, but yeah, I get it. Having to like sometimes you wonder, is this going to turn into too much? Am I going to have to abandon the
Right.
the hobby
It's
job for the day job?
it's and then there's that fine line of like, Jeep Mama and TNT, you don't want
Hmm.
to, over like, oh, you did that blog on Jeep Mama, you're supposed to do that for work. And, but Mary and Bob are cool,
Yeah,
so it'll be fine. And I'm going to cross promote on my stuff, so
Yeah.
it'll all be good. But
Yeah, I mean the Jeep Mama persona with TNT Customs, right? Like that's not a
Mhm.
bad thing for for people that know you to know that you're
Right.
there, right? That can actually help the business. But yeah, there is a
It's
line, right? It's like, well, I got
it's
paid to write this for work. If I put it on my own blog, that feels like, yeah.
right. Um, the funny thing though is being on the phone with a customer and they're like, "Are you Jeep Mama?" I'm like,
You get that a lot.
"Yeah, it's happened twice." So,
That's
um,
cool. People know
anyway,
you. People know
yeah.
you're kind of a
I'm kind
big
of a big
deal.
deal. Yeah. Ha! I should break out my socks. I'm kind of a big deal. So,
Yeah.
anyway,
So, yeah, hopefully in the maybe a couple of weeks, my shoulder will be back to. They call it a frozen shoulder. I don't know if I talked about that on our last show. Basically, like my shoulder doesn't move in the directions that it has to, and when you get to the edges of where it moves to,
right,
it's like excruciatingly painful to push it any further. And guess what the PT is?
is the man,
Move
the
it to the
mean,
places where it's
right,
not supposed to, where it doesn't want to
the
move.
the mean guy
Yeah,
that makes you
right. It
cry out in
hurts.
pain.
Oh man, it hurts. Anyway, you'd think with modern medicine they'd be able to like numb it or something before they start, but nope, they're just like lie on the table.
All
Anyway,
right. Well, folks, you can find us at offroadinsiders.com, all one word, and we're on Instagram, and we have an email address, offroadinsiders@gmail.com, and reach out to us. Let us know how we're doing. Share some ideas you may have for topics, or if you know somebody cool that we might want to interview on our podcast. We're always open to suggestions. Nate and I were pretty easygoing. This is our hobby, and
yeah,
we like to podcast. You
absolutely.
know,
And we'd love to hear. And we actually have a not so awesome comment to talk about
I
later.
know that's kind of weird. So
But
stay tuned
you
because
know
you want
what?
to hear this.
I welcome feedback of all kinds because if we're not getting it right, I want to know just as well as if we are getting it right. So whether you've got positive or negative, just please don't turn the negative feedback into like name calling or anything. We don't need that. It's so easy to get that on the internet.
Yeah, it is. That's another bad thing about the internet.
Yep.
All right. So today's topic happens to be about driving.
Yeah.
And
That's weird.
yeah,
On a show about
I
off-roading, it's
know.
about driving. But it's not just driving, it's driving off-road.
And it's on different terrains because it's you have to do different things on different terrains. You can't drive like you drive on the asphalt.
Yep.
There's so many different things, and so
Yep.
Nate and I are gonna share our experiences on what has helped us on the
Yep.
different terrains. And do you want to start with mud? Because that seems
Sure.
to
So
be a big
so
thing over on the
like
East Coast.
I've got like 20 something years of experience off-road, right? I learned all this stuff through trial and error. You have the benefit of like professional training, right? So hopefully we'll get most of this right. We won't get any more negative comments.
Negative comments like, no, that's not what you do.
That's not what you do. So yeah, we've listed a bunch of different types of terrain: mud, rocks, dirt roads, even snow, ice, and a couple other like crazy things like driving on frozen lakes. So we're just going to kind of go through the list here. We're going to start out with mud. And mud, I mean,
I hate mud. I'm just
me
saying
too.
it's not my I hate it.
I've done my share of mud. I've seen plenty of people do mud. I've interacted with it with plenty of people who like mud. So I feel at least mostly qualified to talk about driving in mud. And there's different types of mud. Obviously, there's like the full-on deep mud bog stuff, and then there's just like the inconvenient mud stuff, and then there's just like
Mhm.
everything in between, the rutted mud and the just kind of like the slippery mud that are
That
all
thick clay mud.
yeah. And the number one piece of advice I can give to anybody who's going through any of those types of mud is momentum is key. However,
Mhm.
you also want to know what's in there. And if you're going
Yes.
into a deep mud bog or like a watery thing where you don't know what's underneath, you're going to want to either know someone who knows, like have a guide with you or something that says like, oh yeah, that puddle is smooth on the bottom or it's just slippery on the bottom. There's no like nasty rocks or sticks or logs or whatever that
Tree
are gonna mess you up.
stumps.
Tree
Yeah.
stumps. You're gonna want to know what's ahead of you before you charge in there. And if there is a decent amount of water, did we cover? We have puddles here later. We do have water. Okay, so we'll
Yeah.
talk more about water as we get there. But you don't want to just like charge straight in. There's kind of a technique where you get some momentum and then you almost back off a little, but not enough that it slows you down, right? And then you want to keep it moving. The key is keep moving forward, keep the tires spinning, but with traction, right? And as you're gonna lose traction, right? So don't feel bad if they start to spin. And as they start to spin, the spin is actually what keeps you moving. But you're gonna want tires that will not. Let me think here. For mud, you want tires that are going to clear out, right? So that
Hmm.
they don't hang on to the mud and become slick,
Right.
right? That's why mud tires have those big open grooves in between the lugs. That's so that as they spin, they throw the crap out. That's why mud bogs always have mud flying everywhere, right? The clearer your tire tread is, the more it'll be able to grip on whatever it can get a hold of, right? So get some momentum, keep traction for as long as you can. When you start to lose traction, then a bit of wheel spin is not a bad thing. Just be mindful of your poor engine and how many RPMs that you're spinning it up to. Any other points, Tammy?
Well, I just, that's like going through the mud. That's exactly what I was taught. One thing that you need to be careful, or what you need to do for sure, is have your recovery gear like right on the seat next to you, because you
Oh
don't want to
yeah.
have to get out and go on the back and you're in this
Yep.
big mud thing. Maybe
Yep.
have your tow strap already on the front of your Jeep ready to
Yep.
go. The other thing is, when I went on an overland adventure this past summer, Videos was with me. He can attest to this, but the mud was we were doing the overland or the Oregon Trail, part of the path here in Wyoming along the Sweetwater River, and that mud was so thick, it just caked in my Jeep, in the
Yeah.
wheels. Get out, and especially if it's something like cementy or clay like, because if that hardens, that is like, dig it out. I spent like 20 minutes digging out chunks of mud that were stuck in the wheels in the back, by the brakes and everything. So, just be cognizant of that and clean it out. I think that's the most important thing. And if you can, unless you're vehicle is built to do that kind of stuff every day, I avoid it at all costs. I'll go
Yeah.
around a little mud puddle, just because it's not good. And if it gets like into your frame of your Jeep, like the JKs have all those holes, that mud is gonna, unless you can get it all out, it's just gonna keep getting wet, and
Yep.
that's a
Yep. So
rust monster.
we did an episode, I forget which one it was now, about post trip cleanup and or
Yes.
maintenance, right?
Yep.
Go back and find that one and listen, because we talk about cleaning out the inside of your frame rails. We talk about cleaning out your brakes. We talk about rinsing or washing the
Yeah.
frame and the undercarriage and all the stuff to check for. But all that stuff applies now.
And if you don't see tracks on the other side of your mud thing, don't go in it. Don't try to
Oh
wheel
yeah.
alone in the mud.
Yep. Yeah, keep an eye out. Pay attention to the cues, right? If you see
Right.
a giant mud bog and there's a bunch of tracks going in and there's none coming out the other side,
Don't go in.
you can
And
think you're Superman and you're gonna be the
right.
one that gets it. But yeah, chances are, you're gonna end up the same way everybody else did,
Right.
on the
And
end of a strap.
sometimes turning your wheel,
Yeah.
if
Oh
you
yeah.
kind of start getting stuck, turning your wheel each way to see maybe you can get traction a different way.
Yeah.
If you start to get stuck.
As those tires are spinning, if you rock the
Yeah.
wheel back and forth, especially if you're in ruts, because the tires will kind of like bump the sides of the ruts,
Hmm.
and you'll feel the front end kind of grab each time it hits the rut, and that'll help get you some forward momentum.
Right.
As long as those ruts aren't so slimy that you just can't grab them.
Right. So my advice is don't go in it.
Yeah, Some people love it. Some people love the
Yeah.
mud. We get a lot of it at the jamborees because it seems like it's everybody's like first go-to for off-road.
Mhm.
They like puddles, they like mud.
Right.
Um, I don't know. I mean, I was there once. I don't know if you ever were, but that was me when I was like 19.
Yeah.
But I've gotten past it. I had a friend who got his YJ just like up to its headlights in water. And I had to pull them
Oh,
out, right? And
no
that was like,
thanks.
I'm like, why do we do this to ourselves? Maybe I don't
Right.
like this anymore.
Yeah. It's not fun.
Yeah, yeah. All right.
So rocks is next, and I loved to rock crawl. It was a lot of fun. It's challenging.
Hmm.
Um, but if you don't do it right, you could, and you're on serious rocks, you could do some
Yeah.
damage.
So rock crawling is my personal favorite. It's
Yeah.
the reason I have Dana 60s sitting waiting for me. It's because
Mhm.
I have ideas for the LJ that are going to get it into some much more severe
Mhm.
rock gardens, like things like the Mammoth at AOAA. And I'm going to need better drivetrain for that. But that's not what this episode is about.
No, we're gonna talk about how to drive in the
Yeah.
rocks.
So rocks, no matter what class of rock crawling you're doing, whether you're on 32s and on like light blue trails, or whether you're on 40s and crawling over boulders, in my opinion, and this varies if you look at some of the influencers you see online today, my opinion, rock crawling is 100% about slow and controlled driving,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
You want as much control over where those tires are being placed, what how much torque is getting to them, how fast they're going, whether they have traction or not. So things like lockers to be able to turn them on and off when you need them or don't need them. Low gear reduction so that the tires, you have a lot of control as to how fast you want them to go simply by giving it more gas or putting it in a higher gear if you're in a manual transmission. We talked about this a little bit last week. Um, I think that is the way to rock crawl, right? If you're to the point where you've lost traction, in my opinion, the answer is not to mash the skinny pedal and see how far you can get. However, there are cases where people are doing that. You see a lot all over the internet. It looks very flashy.
Right.
Competition is a different case, right? So, like Ultra 4, you see it all the time in Ultra 4, but they're competing. Like they're trying to get through as quickly as possible. They're not just recreational rock crawling, right? And that's carried over to the amateur side of the sport where people are just like, oh, I can't get over it, floor it.
Yeah. No,
I,
that's
I think that's the wrong way to go. Argue with me if you want, but you know, not you. I don't think you'll argue with me, but people on the
no.
internet, come on. I know the
Yeah.
internet loves to argue. Let's go. Come on.
So videos just mentioned this, and I was taught this when I was in Moab, actually, with another four-wheel drive trained person, Charlene Bauer. Two-footed driving, because that gives you a little bit more control when
Hmm.
you're going over those rocks, because you
Yep.
you need to have precise braking and precise getting it up and going. The other thing is, when you're on the rocks, you're always two steps ahead of where you're driving. So
Yeah.
you know when you're picking your line, which rock you're going to go to next. And sometimes, like when Nate was saying about that, going really, really fast, you could have your throttle down and the Jeep's not going to go, or your off-road vehicle's not going to go, and you're going to bind up that axle and you're going to break it. Um,
Or you're going to be so chaotic, right? Bouncing up and down and not really know where you're going next.
right.
The number of times I've seen that style of wheeling turn into a Jeep on its side or its roof or
Hmm.
running into a tree or going down a side hill it didn't mean to go down because it's too much chaos. You can't control it.
And the best way to learn how to really wheel good in the rocks is starting out stock. I'm a big
I think
proponent
so.
of starting out your stock, going on those easy green trails, moving up to the blue trail, still in stock, because you'll know what your Jeep can and can't do.
Yep.
And then eventually building up your Jeep and going from there. I just think it makes you such a better wheeler.
And don't be afraid to ask for a spotter.
No, not at all.
I made a video a long while back about spotting, right? In fact, it was when we all went to
Oh,
AOAA.
yeah,
Was
and did the
CBO and everybody.
W.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I made a
Whew.
video about how Blaine and I spotted you guys through that. Um, and I actually got someone telling me like, well, if you need a spotter, you shouldn't be on the trail. Why not? Like, how do you learn?
Right.
You
And
just
so
like run
what?
into stuff?
Right. And who cares, you
Yeah,
know?
right. So like I can wheel now on trails that are within my Jeep's like normal range of skill level without a spotter because I
Oh,
know the underside of the Jeep well enough. I know how it's going to turn. I know how it's going to react. I don't need to have a spotter on most trails. You get to the upper end of the limitations of the Jeep, I need a spotter. I'm not ashamed of that,
right.
right?
Who
You just
cares?
can't see everything.
Right.
Unless you got cameras under the Jeep, which I've seen people do that. You can't see everything. So a spotter is just really helpful. It's not there's nothing to be ashamed of. It's no reason
No.
to yeah. Some people are like that though. So
Crazy, crazy. All right,
oh
next
cool.
on
We
our
got a
list.
we got
I
a
know I
comment here. Good to see you, Nate. We met in October at the Jeep Jamboree, the Pirate Jamboree. Good to see you. Cool.
and I recognize that name. I don't know where I recognize it from.
I I think we've been over this before. I am absolutely horrible with names. So Don, if you told me your name at the Jamboree and I forgot it, it's nothing against you. My brain does not retain names, and it's terrible. I also meet like 1,000 people on a Jamboree weekend, so so great. Thanks for joining us, Don.
So dirt roads.
Yeah,
Um and
I wanted to throw this in here because I think it's worth talking about. If you
I
have
just
thoughts, go
want
ahead
to
and start.
yeah, I was just going to quick say sometimes when you go from these obstacles back onto the dirt roads, sometimes you're better off going into 4 high than staying in
Hmm.
4 low, depending on how long the
Yeah,
dirt road is, because that's hard on your gears and everything if you're
depends
trying
on
to keep up
the
if you're trying to keep up with everybody, you know.
de- depends on the group, right?
Right.
When we guide, whether it's the Jamboree or when I was doing stuff with Kyle, we usually have folks put it in 4 low at the beginning of the day, especially with the newer folks, and we take it
You
out of 4 low
stay
when we get back to the parking lot,
and
just
that's
because like there's a level of like, should I be in high or low? Should I take
right.
it out of 4 wheel drive? And it's a lot easier if you don't really have to think about that for the day. Now, once you're more experienced, feel free. You don't need it, take it out, right?
Well, the thing is, there's on the East Coast, there's shorter spots of dirt roads
Yeah.
between obstacles. Out here,
Yep.
on public lands, you could go for miles upon miles. Um, but just, depending on who you're with and where you are. But dirt roads, I think, are my thing now because they take you to see beautiful scenery, and that's my favorite thing
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah, I mean, there's like, well, you remember Jay, right?
Mm-hmm.
The
Yep.
day me, you, and Blaine went out.
Yep.
Um, he's he and I have. He's probably my oldest wheeling buddy, right? He and I have been wheeling. He's the guy that got me to buy my first Jeep. I had a S10 Blazer, and he was the guy. Remember, I said I was commuting to college with a guy,
Yep.
and he had a Jeep. Well, that was him.
That was Jay. Okay.
um, he and I like we can do the crazy hard trails, but we're just as happy on the easy green trails
Right.
because it's not always about the challenge. Yeah, the challenge is fun, but some days you just want an easy day on the trail, and dirt
Right.
roads are good for that. Like, just go see something you haven't seen before. Like, that's
Right.
great. There's no reason to say,
Or just to get out of
don't.
the city.
Yeah, right. Just to get away. I mean, the number of times I've just been like, I wonder where that dirt road goes.
Mm-hmm.
There's no gate. Let's go find out. You know what I mean? And that's fun. Take the kids and just like, go see some deer or whatever, right? Have a little mini adventure. But when
There's
wheeling on dirt
always a
roads,
but. There's
yeah,
always a but.
when wheeling on dirt roads, it's really easy to like in your brain go, it's just a dirt road. I'm
You
gonna
can
do like 40 miles an hour down this thing. And especially on dirt roads, because there's no things like road markings or signs or like guardrails.
mm-hmm.
A dirt road can turn into a dangerous situation a lot more unexpectedly than a highway can, or
Mhm.
even like a unimproved road that actually has attention from the the local authorities, because you don't have any warning signs. I know someone who I used to know through off road consulting. She was just in like a green guided ride, and she hit a puddle too fast, and something, we never quite figured out how. Somehow, water got into her intake just by hitting this puddle on a green
Oh.
access road. The whole group went through the puddle. Everybody had a blast splashing through this puddle. Somehow she got it into the intake and it hydrolocked her engine.
Oh, that would suck.
Like
Yeah.
completely unexpected. You're like, we're on an access road at AOAA. The puddle is probably 6 inches deep, maybe 8. It's not a deep puddle, right? But somehow it got up in the wrong place at a 3.8 liter. I don't know if there was like a gap in something that shouldn't have been, or if it just hit the wrong way. But yeah, hydrolocked our engine.
Yeah.
So,
Always be
even
on your toes.
dirt roads, even access roads, you can't just think you're invincible because your Jeep is built for the rocks or it's built for blue or
Mhm.
black trails, right? You can still screw things up just by hitting something wrong on a dirt road.
Next, we have snow and ice, which do you guys have any snow there yet up in PA?
There's like between 3 and 4 inches currently outside
Oh,
my window.
yep.
We had like a foot almost, and then it rained for like a week. It felt like,
Oh,
and
wow.
it all got washed away. We had flooding and everything, and then the next week we got cold again, and we got snow, and it's still here. So
Snow sometimes is kind of like mud, depending on what kind of snow, and that's another thing you have to learn to read
yeah,
the snow because there's many flavors of snow.
yep. There's situations where the same concepts about momentum and just a little bit of wheel spin is okay. Is the way you would wheel in snow. However, if it's packed snow and you start spinning, you could start to dig into the pack, right?
Mhm.
And then you end up in these little ruts, just
Correct.
tire shaped ruts. And you're not going anywhere once you get down to your diffs, right? So that's something to keep in mind.
But yeah, it's definitely a balance. You have to, if it's like a snowy ice or a icy snow, which I was at Roush Creek one time, and that was where all those sinkholes were, and it was like really icy.
Hmm.
Um, and sometimes you gotta be super slow. You have to have a smooth drive, and you don't slam on your brakes. You gotta just
Yeah.
slowly pump them
Yep.
because you could just slide right off. Your whole back end could slide. And
Yep.
when you are starting to slide, you gotta turn into your slide. That's true with even just driving on the city streets.
Yeah.
Um,
The other thing to think about when you're sliding though with four wheel drive, um, first of all, in snow, unless you need them, you're going to want lockers off, because if
mhm,
they're on, it's the forward momentum of both wheels at the same speed is going to try to force the vehicle to go in that direction, right? And you don't really want that. You want to be able to you want that differential open so that it can, and maybe, or with a limited slip, right? Or even with traction control, you want things to be able to move at a different speed so that you can then control what direction you're going, right? So that's just the thing to think about. But on sliding, with four-wheel drive, you can control a slide differently than if you're in a two-wheel drive vehicle. It's similar to front-wheel drive, but not quite the same, because you've got one in the rear and one in the front spinning it, at the same time. Um, you start to slide, say the rear end starts to kick to the right. If you turn it to the right, or maybe if you wanted to go left, you turn it to the left and just goose the throttle. The front end will pull in the direction that you aim the tires. So
mhm.
that's an important thing to remember in the snow. And that applies for on road in the snow as well, right? If you've got an all wheel drive or four wheel drive vehicle and you're sliding, maybe you're sliding someplace you don't want to go, that if you turn into, it'll put you into a bad place. Turn it the other way and goose it just a little. You don't want to like floor it, just like a quick bump on the throttle. That'll straighten the vehicle out, right? So it's a thing you have to practice and get used to. But that's something I've learned over the years that works pretty well.
I think for me, I mean, I grew up driving in the snow. That's
Yeah, me
how
too.
I learned, and some things, I don't even think about. You
You just
just
do.
inherently do, and
Oh, I'm sliding. You go into
I
like
know,
autopilot mode, and all
and
of a sudden you're
who
fine again. And
right, and I couldn't even
you're like,
explain it. You just
what did
know.
I just do?
And
Yep.
there's like I said, there's different kinds of snow. There's the powdery snow, there's the slushy snow, and
Yeah.
it really no one it can really teach you. You just have to learn by doing in
Yeah.
each situation. But you
Yep.
just
Yep. And super deep snow is a whole different animal. I don't have a ton of experience wheeling in really deep snow, like snow that's above the bumper. Again,
and
this is one of those cases where I've seen it done. I don't have you been out in snow that deep?
no, but that's what they do here. They call it snow bashing.
Yep.
And
And
it,
from
you
from what I
spend most of your
understand,
time winching each other out.
yeah.
So if you like that, snow bashing can be fun. But go ahead.
From what I understand, the key here is larger tires are better, depending on how deep the snow is that you're getting into, because you want to get those differentials up high. And you basically use forward momentum to plow your way through the snow to break, quote unquote, break the trail, and that pushes snow out of the way. So you want to put whoever is in the front should have the vehicle that is best suited to get that done, right? So that
Mhm.
they can so then the next people in line
'Cause they're forging a
have
new trail.
right sort of a path to follow, right?
Mhm.
Um, it it isn't it's not as dangerous for the vehicle because snow is like light and fluffy, right? It's not going to break anything, but it does do things like put more strain on your engine because you're usually like giving it more gas to get moving, right? You're basically
Mhm.
using momentum to get into the snow. Um, and you're going to just basically use a lot of fuel, right? Dirt Lifestyle just had a video on this. He was out with some friends. He had his Tacoma, and he like got back to civilization on fumes because they used so much fuel because he was breaking trail. And it's just a thing that you got to think about, right? Bring extra fuel if you're going to be the one breaking trail because you're going to go through fuel faster than everybody else in the pack. So um, again, videos is here. Horsepower for deep snow. Yep.
Yeah, he went on one he went snow bashing, gosh, was it last anyway, it was, like, within the past year, and they spent more time winching people out. And
Yep.
make sure if you do go do this, make sure you go with people who can air down their tires, who has recovery gear, and shovels, and otherwise
Those those kinetic ropes are supposedly really useful in the snow.
right, I'm sure they are, yeah.
Better than a normal static strap would be. I mean, those are from what I can tell, they're useful in a lot of situations. I don't have one yet. I got to get one, but yeah, they're really good in the snow. They say because they're good at yanking people out. What was the other thing I wanted to mention? I thought there was another thing. Oh, pay attention to where like momentum and gravity and physics are making you go, right?
Mhm.
Because if you start going in one direction and gravity is shifting you somewhere else, if you don't realize it, you could end up in a bad spot pretty quick.
Especially if you're on mountains. You gotta be very careful there.
Yeah, exactly. Some of the videos I've seen, it's like they're on what looks to me to be just a little wider than a vehicle, and they're just like plowing through the snow. I'm like, man, I would be so nervous because it's like cliff, maybe not cliff, but trees and downhill next to you. It seems a
Right.
little sketchy to me.
So, the next is slick rock, and what I know of what is called slick rock, it's the rocks, like, out in Moab,
Hmm.
and it's not slick. It's
Yeah, it is a weird
actually
name.
yeah, it's it's kinda sticky, I guess. You have good traction, and it's super easy because you just the rock pulls the black stuff off of your tires,
Yeah.
and
Well,
so
it's
you
like
just
if you're doing burnouts on
right.
on the macadam, right? That wears it onto the street, right?
So as long as you're following the tracks, it's pretty easy to wheel on. Um, you just follow the black tracks.
There is I've never been to Moab, but I've seen seen mention of heating up your tires for the steeper climbs, where you basically like get onto the obstacle and let the tires spin a bit, and that kind of makes the rubber feel a little gummier, and then it'll
Mhm.
grip better onto the rocks. Again, I've never done this. I just know that this is what I've heard is what you do
Mhm.
on slick rock. I don't know if you had any experience with that, or if you saw anybody doing it, or if you know anything about it, but I've heard that's the way you get it done.
I
Not like crazy full throttle, try to get up a
right.
sheer rock face, but let them spin a bit to warm up.
I when I wheeled at Moab, I did the pretty simple, easy trails. Um, there's a few that were kinda hard, but nothing too serious.
Yeah,
But and it's all about following the tracks.
yeah.
Um, and there is the granite rock, which is out, on the Rubicon Trail, and that is slippery. That's a little bit more slick, I guess you would say. So
Is
there's
it
a whole
actually is it granite or is it something like granite?
well, I mean, I don't know, I thought it was granite. They called it the granite slabs.
Okay.
That was yeah. So that scared me a lot more than, anything in Moab.
I was on granite when I visited the Bearded Jeeper, which is why I asked if it's
Okay.
actually granite or not.
I
And
mean,
it was surprisingly slippery for
yes.
how it looks. It looks so coarse,
Right,
right?
right.
And I remember my tires having trouble gripping it. Maybe not
Yeah.
trouble exactly, but I remember it being like
It
not
feels
as
different.
sticky as I
Right,
thought it would be.
right. So, each different rock terrain is gonna be just a little bit different.
Yeah.
Um, and we should speed it up here a little
I know
bit.
it's
I
8:44 already and we
know.
have like
Whoo!
3 different ones to get through.
Yeah.
2
So
different
we'll
ones to get through.
yeah. Well,
So the
the last one will be quick.
next one's water. Similar to what we talked about with deep mud and
Mud.
whatnot, is you're going to want to either know what's under there, know someone that knows what's under there, or figure out what's under there before you go charging into it.
Mhm.
Either I've done the thing where you like walk alongside of it with a big long stick
Yep.
and like
Yep.
poke around. You get a feel for what the bottom feels like, and you get a feel for if there's any rocks down there or whatever. You can like drag it through, right, to try to feel what that's like. Um, the the trick I was talking about that I was alluding to earlier, and I said we'll hold off for water, is you've seen when a boat goes through the water on like a nice pristine lake, you get that wake around it.
Mhm.
Your Jeep does the same thing. Your vehicle, I should say, does the
Yeah.
same thing when it's in the water. So what you're going to end up with is right in front of your vehicle is going to be a slightly deeper wave of water, right? So the trick is you hit the water. I don't know. I'm going to throw out random numbers here just for the sake of example. Hit the water at 15 miles an hour. And then as soon as it starts that wake and you're not in the deep stuff yet, back off by like 1 or 2 miles per hour, right? Then that wake will go in front of your Jeep. And then you follow the wake. Then you'll end up with like a pocket of water that's slightly less deep
Mhm.
just because of the way that wake is going, right?
Mhm.
You don't want to plow that water because that's how it ends up over your hood and that's how it ends up getting into your air intake, right? 15 miles per hour was not like, I'm not suggesting you should go 15 miles per hour in it. That's for the sake of example. Maybe it's more like 5 miles per hour and back down to 3, right? But the idea is you want to hit the water so that it causes a wake and then immediately back off just a little and then catch up to the wake and follow it, right? So it's a trick that takes some practice, but it's a thing that
Just
I've found helpful over the years.
and, each vehicle is gonna be different on how deep you should go depending on,
Hmm.
if you have a snorkel, if you are your tires and your lift. And again, don't go in the water if you're all by yourself, because you might need someone to pull you out. And then another thing is when you get out of the water, you're probably gonna wanna let your brakes dry out.
Yeah.
Use them lightly until they get dried out.
Yeah.
Um,
Once they're wet, they won't grip as quickly.
right.
And then as they start to dry off, they'll grip actually much more quickly. It's a weird feeling. They'll like
Mhm.
grab, and then once they're back to normal, you'll be able to tell.
Right.
I don't know how to describe it other than that, but they'll get like really like they'll feel like you hit the brake and it's not grabbing, and then they'll feel like you hit the brake and you're practically locking up your brakes, and then they'll feel like normal again.
And the other thing is, like, if you let the person in front of you go all the way through, and then wait for the water to calm
Yep.
down
Yep.
before you go through.
Yeah, and I mean, this is all for deep, deep water, right? This is for water
Yeah.
that's higher than your bumper. Um, and you were talking about air intake. Some off-road vehicles, I know the Wrangler has this. I don't know about things like the Bronco or the Toyota. They literally have the air intake depth or the Ford depth written in the owner's manual. The JL actually has it stamped on a plate on the back tailgate.
Huh. I didn't know
So
that.
you're like, how deep can I go? Oh, it's 27 inches.
Right.
Like, here's an exact number of what they've rated the vehicle at. Now, obviously, as you lift the vehicle, that changes. Um, we can have a whole other episode about waterproofing a vehicle for water crossings,
Mhm.
because there's a lot more to think about than just the air intake if you're going to seriously do water fording. But anyway, that's the number one most important thing. There's also electronics to think about, and breathers for your axles and all kinds of other things.
So my advice, don't go through deep water.
I mean, again, right? If you like that and you like
Right.
that's part of the challenge, then
Yeah.
just know what you're getting into and make sure that you're prepared for it. Um, I've got
And
a
I'm
picture.
just a chicken, so
I've got a picture from my off-road consulting days where the water is up to my headlights on the LJ,
oh,
and I'm just in there like trying to keep my cool because I'm guiding this whole group of folks, and I'm like, if I
you
mess
can't
this
freak
up,
out, right?
if
I
I freak
remember
out, it's gonna make a real bad example. I
I
don't do water
remember when
much.
I went with Kyle, he took me through one of those little lake things at Roush Creek, and I'm like, "Are
Yeah.
you sure? Are you
Are you
sure?"
sure I can do that? Yes, I am.
Oh, I
If you
was
can trust anybody, it's him.
freaked out, but it was fine.
Yeah.
He knows it.
Yep.
So then the
Yep.
next one is my favorite, is on a frozen lake, and do not go on the frozen lake unless it's at least 12 to 15 inches thick, the ice,
Yeah.
before you take your vehicle out. You need to check the lake every so many feet, um, just to
Yep.
make sure the whole lake is frozen. Um, my niece told me these tips last year when I did a video on this. I went on a frozen lake in Minnesota. You always keep your windows rolled down in case you go through the
Hmm.
ice so you can have a
Well, you can get
quick
out.
escape.
Yep.
Yeah. Don't
Because
fasten your seatbelt.
the water pressure will hold your doors shut. If anyone's wondering, like, why the hell would I want my windows down? I want them up to hold the air in. No, you want them down
Yep.
because if the water pressure outside of the vehicle presses in on those windows, you won't be able to open the doors.
Right.
And then the only way to get out is to smash a window, and then all the
With
water
one of those
gets like
little tools. Yeah.
rushes in. If you have the windows down, the pressure inside the cab and outside of the cab are the same, so you'll be able to open the door to get out.
And don't fasten your seatbelt because, again, you're going to want a
Yeah.
quick escape.
Yep.
And if you're with a group of vehicles, you got to stay well spaced apart, um, and around the fish houses too. I mean, typically that's the only reason you're really going to be out on a lake is if you're going to go ice fishing. Um, and space yourself out when you're parking because you don't want that weight or all that weight piling up in one
Yeah.
spot.
It's a good point. It's a good point.
Um, and do
There was
not
a
drive fast. Go ahead.
no, you finish up with your tips. I was just going to share the same
Oh,
story I told you before we got started.
and don't drive fast because driving fast, and you will see this on the Ice Road show on Netflix, or it used to be on Netflix. I don't know if it's still on, but it causes a pressure wave on the ice that causes the ice to fracture.
Oh, I didn't know
Um,
that.
yeah, so
You mean
just
like entering it quickly or traveling across it quickly?
traveling across it quickly,
Hmm. It's
driving
good to know.
fast. So,
Good to know.
um, anyway, those are my frozen lake driving tips.
And of course, all the normal ice advice applies, right? Ice is slippery.
Yep.
Changing directions quickly is not a thing you're going to be able to do. Stopping quickly is not a thing you're going to be able to do. Don't
And
be surprised if you spin in circles when you try to stop or turn.
And sometimes there's like they have snow plows on some of these lakes where they plow little paths
Huh,
on the lake.
it's crazy.
So stay on the paths because you don't know. There could
Yeah,
have been a fish house over here,
yeah.
and there's holes there.
I guess I
Um,
just don't live in a state where it gets cold enough that you ever drive on
right,
the ice. Like I've been on a frozen lake on foot. Never done it in a vehicle because we just don't. It just doesn't get that cold here.
right.
Um, but the thing I was going to share was when I was in my teens, maybe early 20s, there was a story of some folks that were out wheeling in my local area here, got onto a frozen lake. I don't even know if they knew it was a frozen lake, right? Like, did they not know the area?
Oh,
Were they just
yeah.
dumb? I don't know. But yeah, they broke through the ice and they died. So definitely not the sort of thing like that'll put a real bad end to your day. Even if you
Right,
do survive it, you're going to have a vehicle at the bottom of a frozen lake to try to
right.
deal with later.
Or even ponds or little,
Yeah.
sloughs, or I don't know what you call them back there, like the little swampy areas.
Yeah.
You just ice, you just don't know. And it's funny because usually at Christmas time, I went back to Minnesota and people are ice fishing in December. This year, they were on jet skis still
Yeah.
because it hasn't gotten cold. It didn't get cold enough yet to
It's
freeze those
crazy.
lakes.
It's crazy the weather this year. The past couple
Yeah.
years, it's
Yeah.
been insane.
Super cold or super warm. Like it
Yeah.
was 50 degrees here today. We were, a heat wave.
Yeah,
So,
we've been in the teens, the lows in the teens, and it's been up to
mhm,
like either the 20s or 30s during the day, which is about normal for this time of year in Pennsylvania. But a week and a half ago, it was in the 50s and raining. Right,
mhm.
that was when all that snow went away. And next week, it's supposed to be back up again, or at the end of this week. So yeah, weather is weird this year. So I think that covers terrain. If we missed anything or got anything wrong, please let us know in the kindest way you know how.
Mm-mm.
And we'll be happy to either cover it again, incorporating the feedback, or just talk about the feedback, right? So yeah, let us know if we got anything wrong. If you want to reach out to us, you can reach us via email at offroadinsiders@gmail.com. You can find our website, offroadinsiders.com, or find us on Instagram, Offroad Insiders. And those are the best ways to get a hold of us. Both Tammy and I check all of those things.
Mhm.
So I think you check all those things. I check all those things.
I usually do. And my daily checking of Jeep Mama and
Yep.
Tammy and
Yep.
TNT and Off-Road
I have
Insiders.
I have way too many online properties I keep
Yeah,
track of.
it's like I have a whole checklist.
But speaking of those, this is the thing I was alluding to earlier today. I'm trying something new for this episode. So we live stream to YouTube. Tammy, honestly, how do you feel about YouTube? Not just like the fact that it's an outlet for you to get your videos out there. How do you feel about what you go through to deal with YouTube?
I mean, to me, I know it so well. It's easy,
Right.
right?
But
I
you had to
don't
learn how to tag things and
Yes.
you had to
Oh,
fit into their monetization stuff, and
yeah.
you basically had to be groomed by YouTube
Mhm.
to be successful on YouTube.
Oh, yeah, there's lots of rules, so to
Be-
speak, that you gotta
because
follow if you want
because you never know
to.
when your content's going to get demonetized or taken down because of something you
Mhm.
said or something you did or something you featured that is against their terms of service or against,
I know what you're gonna say.
whatever.
I think I know what you're
Um,
gonna say.
or there's, like certain content just isn't welcome on YouTube, or
Mhm.
in order to get monetized, right? There's certain things. And so we have to fit into all these molds, right? Um, I have found that there is an alternative. Now, there's no monetization on this alternative, but it's something that fits like my niche perfectly. And it fits into the social media thing I was talking about earlier. And that is a decentralized video hosting platform called PeerTube.
Oh, okay.
And it's very similar to YouTube. It looks and feels not identical, but similar, right? The same concepts, right? You put videos up and people can watch them and they can comment on them and you can live stream to them. And tonight, our
Are
show
we
is live
on?
streaming to both PeerTube and
Yay!
YouTube. So there's a link in our show notes where you can go and see the stream as it was on PeerTube, which should look just like it is on YouTube because StreamYard lets us stream to more than one place. But right now it's actually live. Let me go see. I don't think we have any viewers there because I didn't announce it to like anybody. But it's there. If you're on PeerTube, reach out to me. There's not unless I haven't configured it, I don't know that there's live chat over here.
Well, how
So
cool is
you won't
that?
be able to chat with us, but it's
There's
cool, right?
overwhelming amount of places to share
So
your stuff.
the reason I like it is just I can host it myself. And the thing, it does this thing called federation across other PeerTube instances, right? So like someone on their own instance can find content from mine, right? And I had also tinkered with an Instagram replacement, or not replacement, but Instagram federated thing called PixelFed a couple years ago, or a year or so ago.
Mhm.
And I registered a domain called Offroad Town to run that
Oh.
on. So this is videos.offroadtown. Well, just videos.offroad.town. If you go there, you'll get to my PeerTube instance and you'll be able to watch this video. So I think it's pretty cool. So yeah,
News.
I just thought it was neat. Yeah, videos wants the news.
I know,
I
he's
have,
like, "Get on with it, people."
yeah, I have some bad news for you. We've only got one article today, and it's not really news. It's just something I was interested in. So unless you have any news you want to throw in there while I cover our very next thing, which is that feedback I was talking about.
There
Um,
was, the 392 is being discontinued.
Oh, well, if you can find an article or something, throw it in there. We'll
Yeah,
talk about it as soon
I
as we get
had
to the
it.
news. So the comment that I was talking about earlier, I got messaged on Instagram. I don't know if you remember last time we recorded, we were talking about what to consider when you lift your vehicle. And I had mentioned my tow rig, the '08 Cadillac Escalade, and how you can't lift it. I use the words can't lift it. I should have known better. Can't is a very definitive
No, you
word.
shouldn't say can't,
And
right?
everyone will be like, yes, you can. You can totally lift it, because can't is like no, zero, you cannot. I shouldn't use that word. When I looked into it, you couldn't lift it. I think it's because it's an all-wheel drive model, and I did not say that on the last episode. But the comment I got was actually a chat from somebody on Instagram. They said that they had listened to 17 minutes of our episode. They'd never listened to an episode before. They didn't know who either of us were. They just happened across our show, and they said it's the last 17 minutes they're ever going to give us because of that comment about the Cadillac. I have no idea why that was such a like harsh thing that they decided we are dead to them. But all I can say is I'm sorry. We don't always get it right.
Yeah.
I tried to write
And
back to the guy or person to say, like, what would you have done different or whatever, and here's why I said the thing that I said, and I didn't get a response. So I guess we lost that person. We'll never have them as a viewer or listener ever again, and that's a shame.
and you know what? We all have our own opinions from our own
Yeah,
experiences, and,
yeah. So
it is what it is.
all right, so videos. I'm sorry I rambled for so long about my nonsensical, geeky stuff, and then about our comment on Instagram. But we are into the news now. The only news article I found, the only thing I care about in the next 2 weeks, is that King of the Hammers has started. They have the King of the Motos stuff going on like now, I think, or it started like over the weekend. Then there's kind of a gap in the schedule, but later this week they start qualifying for things like the actual main event and the Ultra 4 UTV race, and the trophy truck stuff happens this week. Go check it out. I put a link to where their schedule is. They live stream all of it. There's like last year there was a $30 fee you paid to get their premium stream. I thought it was worth it if you're really into the event. I bought it. I've bought it for several years in a row now as the event is on. I make a whole event out of this. Like, this is my Super Bowl. I love to sit down in the living room and put it on the TV and make the kids watch it.
Oh,
My wife gets like snacks. We treat it like the Super Bowl. It's awesome. So
I
anyway,
I just catch
King of the Hammers.
clips on social media.
It's good stuff. You should check it out. Watch the race sometime. It's fun. It's fun to watch. Our buddies from the Northwest Jeepcast race in it. I don't know if they are in
Oh,
this year or not. I haven't followed up to see if they're racing this year. Do you remember JK Gear and Gadgets? The
yes, yep,
YouTube channel. He made a
yep.
car this year.
Oh, okay.
I was just watching a video before our show tonight that he had it ready to go. So I'm gonna try to figure out what race he's in and what number he is, so I can check him out during the show as well.
And didn't Cora with Torque Lockers, did she race in it too? At times, I think.
They have an LJ, I think, that is very Ultra 4 looking.
Uh-huh.
I think they race it. I don't
Yeah,
know.
for
I
some
saw it at a
reason,
jamboree one year, and
yeah.
I don't know if they race it or not. They might race.
So the Jeep Wrangler Rubicon, the um, the 392 powered, they apparently are saying goodbye because they're
I'm not surprised.
discontinuing that Jeep.
I'm not surprised. Well, I
Um,
mean, first of all, who really needs a 392 Wrangler?
right.
I mean, they're
Actually, when
awesome. Don't get me wrong. I saw one at a jamboree once, and it's awesome, right? But they can't be a high seller.
I when I worked at the Jeep dealer in Minnesota, I worked at a Jeep dealer for a short period of time, and there was one that we sold, and it was noisy. It was very noisy.
Yeah,
Um,
you could hear this one. I don't think it was any noisier than my tow rig. Any noisier than any other V8. I guess it depends on
right.
the exhaust you have on it. And for all I know, this guy had replaced the exhaust. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I don't know either. So anyway, that's what they're saying. It's
Uh,
reportedly being discontinued. I haven't seen
Videos
an
confirms it here.
official.
Video says the 392 final edition is coming later this year. So that makes it
Yeah,
sound like, yes, they are in fact.
right.
Why would you call it the final edition otherwise?
So everything I have seen is rumored or reportedly. I was looking for Jeep to actually. Well, MSN says say goodbye to the Jeep Wrangler Rubicon
Well, if
392.
it's on the
So,
internet, it has to be true, right?
so um,
Remember that when I was a kid, that was the saying. If it's on
yeah,
television, it has to be
to be
true. Well,
true, right?
now it's if it's on the internet, it has to be true.
So there you go. The news of the week.
Sorry to keep
Um,
that brief, but we are just out of time.
yep. And next show, I think this is a really good idea.
Yeah, I threw this one in here
Yeah, it's a good
while I
one.
was prepping tonight, but
And it's very important. This can make or break somebody's experience. And I'll have a story to share with you in our next episode on how this broke a couple of Jeepers by
yep.
not doing this. And the topic
So
is drum
the
roll,
next
boom.
2 weeks from now, we'll be talking about how to be a good trail guide.
Hmm.
I've got lots of experience at it. Tammy, you've got some experience at it too. I
Hmm.
don't know how much trail guiding you've done, but I get the feeling it might be more than I thought.
Yeah,
You've done
actually,
your share, right?
I ended up, when we were on the Rubicon Trail, I ended up having to lead that. It was a fan ride I did, and I ended up having to lead that trail.
On the Rubicon.
The Rubicon, yeah.
I think you told me about this. They're like, "You're Jeep Mama, you can lead."
Yeah, I'm like,
You're like, "I've never been here before."
right. So I winged it. I got everyone through.
That's
The
maybe that'll be
the important people
a
through.
topic. Like being
There.
comfortable with being uncomfortable is okay.
Yeah. So I have a couple stories about trail guiding. So yeah, join us in 2 weeks, and we will talk
Yeah.
about how to be a good trail guide.
So thank you. We had relatively active chat tonight. We
Yeah.
had a new visitor tonight that knew me from the Jamboree, so that's awesome. Thank you for joining us. And videos, of course, as usual, giving us a bunch of extra commentary in the chat. Helpful as always.
Get on with it, Nate.
Come on, get to the news. Stop talking about this nerdy crap. We don't
Uh-huh.
care.
Uh,
All right, so good episode tonight. Any final words there, Tammy, before we go?
no, just everyone have a great couple of weeks and stay warm
Yeah,
once
just
once
a
the winter weather starts coming back.
quick reminder, find us wherever you find podcasts. And we thank you guys for watching, listening, whatever you're doing. And we'll catch you in 2 weeks. Have a
Peace
great one.
out.